The first leg of this journey departed from the southwest of Boston Lake, following the Kangkyu River west for a while, until an ancient river flowing south was found. Boston means to stand up, and it is named so because there are 3 mountains standing tall in the middle of the lake. In ancient times, people called this lake the Fish Sea, and it is China's largest freshwater lake. The Kangkyu River originates here and flows deep into the Taklamakan Desert. As we passed the lakeside, looking into the distance, a vast expanse of green water was overwhelming, making one feel as if they had reached the end of heaven and earth. For the first 2 days, Professor Tran's 3 students were very excited. They were all very young, entering the desert for the first time, feeling both novel and thrilled. One moment they would learn to whistle and command camels from old Anlaman, the next they would chase each other, singing joyfully. I was also secretly thrilled, only regretting that I couldn't join their fun. However, I was the team leader and had to be a bit serious. Thinking of this, I straightened my back, trying to make my image a bit more resolute. According to old Anlaman, this first section of the journey could not really be considered a desert. The riverbed in some stretches was not completely dry, the surrounding sand was very shallow, and small lakes were scattered everywhere. Occasionally, flocks of gulls and red-billed ducks swam on the water. Along the Kangkyu River there were small oases, full of hawthorn trees, poplars, and some shrubs. Only after this river section did we truly enter the desert. The Kangkyu River turned southeast, towards Lulin, Lop Nur, and Danya. We headed southwest, entering the Black Desert. Old Anlaman said the Black Desert was created by Hu Bayi to punish greedy heretics, burying countless cities and treasures, but no one had ever been able to retrieve them. Even if you only carried a single gold coin, you would lose your way, get lost, and be forever buried by the wind and sand, with no hope of escape. This was a shifting desert. The wind blew sand dunes, changing the terrain daily with no distinct features. The ancient river had long disappeared. Fortunately, old Anlaman's experienced eyes missed nothing, from half-buried cities, houses, and towers to poplars tilted at a 30-degree angle by strong winds, and even the tiny saxaul trees in the desert. All these clues strung together indicated one thing. The ancient Kangkyu River once flowed here, and the end of this disappeared river was the legendary ancient city of Jingjue, abandoned by Hu Bayi. What impressed us most deeply in this desert were the 1,000-year-old poplars. If you didn't see them with your own eyes, who would believe there were plants in the desert? Each poplar was like a mighty dragon, all its branches leaning towards the east, as if the dragon was striding across the desert. In this harsh environment, having endured for thousands of years, they had long since dried up, their branches almost pressed to the ground by the wind, yet they still did not fall. The first rays of sunlight appeared on the horizon, painting the clouds red in the corner of the sky. The brilliant afterglow covered the undulating sand dunes, the barren poplar groves, and the golden sand. Strips like waves all stained a brick yellow, a vibrant color, like a magnificent painting unfolding between the vast heavens and earth. Everyone wanted to avoid the scorching midday sun, so they walked all night. Tired as they were, seeing the scenery uplifted everyone's spirits. Shirley Young exclaimed, "The desert is so beautiful. My God. Everyone, look at that poplar. It looks like a golden divine dragon in the desert." After speaking, she took out her camera and snapped continuously, hoping to capture this beautiful scene. While everyone was immersed in the beautiful scenery, I noticed old Anlaman staring blankly at the rising sun, a hint of unease on his face. I rushed over and asked, "What's wrong, sir? Is the weather about to change?" Because back home I had heard morning glow, don't go out, evening glow, travel 1,000 miles, and a red morning glow probably wasn't a good omen. Today was the 5th day since our departure, and the 3rd day since entering the Black Desert. Ahead was the ruins of the ancient city of Xianxia. We originally planned to arrive there tomorrow, but old Anlaman said this storm was very big, even sand walls would be difficult to block. If we didn't quickly reach the ancient city of Xianxia, we would all be buried alive in the desert. I heard the old man say this and knew it was no joke. This place was still more than half a day's journey from the ancient city of Xianxia ruins. If anything happened on the way to delay us, it would be big trouble. However, everyone was exhausted from walking all night. There were old people and women in the team. Whether they could continue to persevere was hard to say. I jumped onto a camel's back, intending to call everyone to depart quickly, but then I saw old Anlaman slowly dismount his camel, pull out a rug, slowly spread it on the sand, and kneel. With his eyes closed, a sincere expression on his face, he spread his arms towards the sky, then covered his face and began chanting. He was praying to Allah. He had to pray every morning. I saw him calm and serene, thinking that the storm expected tonight wasn't serious, so I felt relieved and went to admire the scenery with Tuyan Shirley, Yang, and everyone else. Unexpectedly, after old Anlaman finished praying, he seemed to transform into a different person. The old man seemed wound up, rolled up the rug in 2 or 3 quick motions, then sprang onto his camel like a spring. Then he let out a long whistle. Whoosh! Run quickly. If you run slowly, you'll be buried in the black sand. He spurred the camels forward and rode ahead. I cursed, damn that old man. The situation was so urgent, yet he had calmly prayed just now, and now he was rushing off, only then calling everyone to get going. The camels also sensed the danger signal from the sky. Like mad, they galloped across the desert. Usually, riding a slowly pacing camel, swaying back and forth, was enjoyable, but when they ran, it was incredibly bumpy. We clung tightly to the camels' backs, fearing we might lose our grip and fall. The caravan of camels sped across the desert, stirring up golden sand and dust into a giant dragon. Everyone wore goggles and covered their noses and mouths with scarves. I looked around, feeling more and more that something was wrong. The camels were completely out of control, their eyes wide, panting heavily, following old Anlaman's camel like a whirlwind. It seemed the situation was much more critical than I had thought. My biggest worry was that someone might be thrown off a camel. I wanted to shout to old Anlaman ahead to slow down a bit, but I couldn't even open my mouth, or rather, I couldn't open it at all, because if I did, sand and dust would pour in. I could only keep looking back, counting the people on the camels' backs. We rode until midday. Although the camels were hardy, they were also exhausted and sweating profusely, unable to maintain speed. Fortunately, no one fell behind. Old Anlaman told everyone to quickly eat some dry rations and drink some water. He said not to worry about running out of water, as underground water could be found beneath the ancient Xie city ruins, where they could replenish their supply later. After eating and drinking, they let the camels rest and regain strength. Fortunately, they weren't too far, but they still had to resume running immediately, otherwise they wouldn't make it in time. Everyone took out cakes and dried meat, hastily eating a few bites. Tuyan Bio and I were concerned about these intellectuals, asking each person in turn if they were all right. Professor Tran was elderly, and sitting on the bouncing camel had left him panting and unable to speak. Deep Yich Tam, the youngest female student in the group, was vomiting. Both of them only drank a little water, and couldn't eat anything. Hatch Ai Kwok was the most unfortunate. His prescription glasses had fallen off, and he couldn't see anything, becoming very flustered. Fortunately, researcher Tapta Bang was also nearsighted, and had brought a spare pair of glasses. Their prescriptions were nearly identical, which solved Hatch Ai Kwok's problem. Shirley Yang and Sokin, the tall guy, were unharmed. Especially Shirley Yang, perhaps she inherited her adventurous father's genes, or perhaps because she was born and raised in America, possessing a strong adventurous spirit and a robust physique. She hadn't slept all night, and after rushing through the desert for more than half a day, she showed no signs of fatigue. Instead, she looked very energetic, and even helped old Anlaman secure the luggage on the camels' backs. A gentle breeze blew across the sand dunes, stirring up fine sand. The horizon in the distance gradually turned pale yellow. Old Anlaman quickly shouted, "The trade winds are coming. Don't rest anymore. Allah protect us, there are so many of us, run quickly." The archaeological team members, with their tired bodies, once again climbed onto their camels. At this point, they no longer cared about the camels' health, only urging them to run as fast as possible. Just now the sky was still clear, but it seemed to darken in an instant. The wind arrived too quickly, and the sand and dust stirred up by the wind grew thicker and thicker. All around, the world was enveloped in a hazy, dusty veil, and visibility narrowed. In the chaos, I silently counted the team members again, including myself, a total of 8 people. Had someone fallen behind? The wind grew fiercer, sand poured down from the sky, and everything was a pale yellow. I couldn't clearly see who had fallen behind. However, the camel caravan had only just left the sand dune 100 meters ago. It was still possible to go back and look for someone. The first person I thought of was Shirley Yang. Without her, our money would be lost. But I immediately dismissed that thought from my mind. It was too selfish. American lives are precious, of course, but our Chinese lives aren't something to be exchanged for grain or salt either. No one could be left behind. Beside me was Tuyanbio, the only person I could recognize. I wanted to tell him, but the wind and sand were too strong to open my mouth. I resorted to hand gestures on the camel's back, telling him to stop old Anlaman, who was rushing ahead. In that instant, 20 camels ran more than 10 meters further. I didn't have time to see if Tuyanbio understood me. The moment I turned, I was thrown off the back of the camel, which was running headlong. The camel footprints on the desert had been blurred by the wind and sand, and would disappear instantly. I ran against the wind and sand towards our starting point, feeling my body as light as paper, unable to control each step. At any moment, I could be swept away by the fierce wind. Besides the sound of the wind, I heard no other sounds. Staggering for nearly 200 meters, I finally saw a person lying on the sand dune where we had rested earlier. Half of this person's body was covered in sand. I didn't know if they were alive or dead. I rushed over and pulled the person out of the sand. It turned out to be Professor Tran. His condition wasn't good earlier. Perhaps when everyone rushed to get on the camels, he was thrown off. Professor Tran was still alive, just too frightened to speak. Seeing me run over, he fainted again from excitement. Although the sandstorm was fierce now, I knew this was just the prelude to the desert storm that was coming. The truly fierce storm could arrive at any moment. There was no time to delay even a second. I carried the professor onto my back, turned around, and saw that my footprints from before were still visible. Heaven help us, Tuyanbio must stop old Anlaman, who was rushing like a madman. I intended to carry Professor Tran down the sand dune, but the wind from behind was too strong. As soon as I took a step, my legs gave way, and we both tumbled down the slope. In the swirling sand and dust, someone helped me up. It turned out Tuyanbio had understood me, stabbed his knife hard into the camel's rump, caught up with old Anlaman, and pulled him down. The herd of camels, seeing their leader stop, stood still for a moment. Only the camel with the injured rump ran wildly forward, vanishing in an instant into the vast wind and sand. Fortunately, they hadn't run too far. Otherwise, they wouldn't have been able to return. At this moment, no one could speak a word, only making hand gestures. Understand if you can, otherwise just follow. Everyone prepared to climb onto their camels and continue running. But the camels seemed too scared to run anymore. No matter how old Anlaman beat them, they wouldn't obey, lining up and burying their heads in the sand. Along the way, we had seen many white camel bones. When they died, their posture was always like this, like sinners receiving punishment. Old Anlaman said the camels were terrified of Hutai's black sandstorm. They knew the black sandstorm was coming and running was useless, so they simply knelt here to await death. The situation happened too suddenly. We were helpless. Were we to sit here and wait to be buried alive by the golden sand? That taste surely wouldn't be pleasant. While we stood there, Shirley Yang suddenly pulled my hand and pointed west, gesturing for me to look over there. We saw a gigantic white shadow approaching us in the sandstorm-filled sky. It was already very close, but the wind was too loud for anyone to hear. I instinctively pulled the rifle from the camel's back. This small, barreled gun was prepared to deal with wolf packs. Everyone ignored the sandstorm and focused all their attention on the white shadow. What was it, exactly? It didn't look human. The white shadow, like a ghost, arrived beside us in an instant. It was a camel 3 times taller than a normal camel, with only one hump entirely snow white, standing out even more in the golden sand. Wild camel. Several people who recognized the species murmured inwardly. Besides their physical size, the biggest difference between domestic and wild camels is the hump on their back. Domestic camels have 2 humps, while wild camels have only 1. Through my goggles, I faintly saw old Anleman's eyes flash. Those were the joyful flashes of someone finding life in death. He excitedly waved his arms, praising Allah. The camels kneeling on the ground also seemed to be roused, lifting their heads from the sand. Although I didn't understand what was happening, I intuitively interpreted their actions. We still had a chance to survive, we just needed to follow this snow-white wild camel. As an animal of this desert, it surely knew where to hide from Hu Bai's black sandstorm. I immediately signaled the others to climb onto their camels and follow the wild camel ahead. The camels lowered their heads, foamed at the mouth, and used all their remaining strength to follow the white camel, circling around a large sand dune. The desert terrain here suddenly rose sharply, and in an instant the white camel vanished. I silently thought, not good, it's gone, we're in trouble again. The surroundings grew darker and darker. It was already impossible to distinguish between sky and earth. In just 1 or 2 minutes, the black sandstorm that would devour all lives would arrive. Before we could understand what was happening, the camel caravan abruptly changed direction, circling around the towering sand mountain. I looked to both sides and saw a section of ruined wall nearby, and below it a large rammed earth blockhouse. It turned out this was the ruins of a small, ancient city. Most of the architecture was half buried by sand, and some houses had collapsed, with only sturdy walls still standing, enduring countless years of sun, wind, and storms, long since turning the color of the desert. From a distance, it looked only like a large sand mountain. Without looking from the side, one would never discover this ancient city. The snow-white wild camel had run in here to seek shelter. It was just that the collapsed walls of the city had blocked the view, preventing anyone from seeing where it had gone. The city wall was a towering sand barrier. If one asked if this wall could withstand the rare sandstorm before their eyes, in old Anleman's words, it depends on Hu Bai's will. In any case, in this situation, having a place to shelter was truly a blessing from above. The entire archaeological team was temporarily considered to have survived a great disaster. Everyone's faces were pale yellow, unclear if it was from fear or from the clinging dust and sand. Everyone dismounted their camels. Old Anleman ordered them to lie prostrate next to the wall, then led the team one by one down into a large house through its broken roof. Although the ancient city had city walls to block the sandstorm, some sections had collapsed, and over the years a large amount of sand had been blown into the city, filling the already damaged houses to a depth of more than 2 meters. The large house we sheltered in might have been some kind of yamen or city hall. The space was relatively tall and wide, however, one still had to stoop down, as just slightly raising one's head would hit the beams above. Deep Yich Tam, Hatch I Kwok, and others with poor health collapsed onto the ground as soon as they entered the room, pulling out water bottles to drink. The rest helped Professor Tran down. His mind had recovered, but his legs were extremely tired. Tuyen Bio sighed. It seems our lives have been picked up again. As soon as old Anleman entered the room, he immediately knelt down. Demons from the dark hell blow black sandstorms. Thank Hu Bai, thank you for sending the lucky white camel to save us from this nightmare calamity. Old Anleman said that the single, humped white camel was the most magical creature of the desert. Genghis Khan and Western Shah Emperor Li Yuanhao both had white camels, but they all had 2 humps. Although rare, they could not be considered magical. If there was someone in the team Hu Bai disliked, we wouldn't have met the white camel. It seems we are all loyal followers blessed by Allah. From now on, everyone must treat each other like blood relatives. Broken bones heal but not broken trust. Old Anleman thumped his chest and guaranteed, if there's any more danger, I won't abandon everyone and escape by myself. I cursed inwardly, damn you old man. So he never cared about us in the first place. I bet if something happens now, he'll run faster than a rabbit. While we were talking, the sandstorm outside had arrived. The gale howled, shaking heaven and earth. Even inside the ancient city ruins, we couldn't help but be terrified, fearing that if the sandstorm buried the exit, we would suffocate here. So I arranged for Tap to Bang, Tuyen Bio, and Sokin to take turns watching the hole in the route. If anything happened, they had to quickly inform everyone so we could run out. But everyone knew that if the sandstorm moved the entire desert, and the city wall in front was swallowed, even if we ran out, we would merely find another place to be buried. Under the wall outside the room, desert sagebrush grew, a kind of dry grass. I squeezed out and casually plucked a handful. Taking out solid fuel, I lit a small fire to warm everyone. The ancient room was pitch black. Illuminated by the fire, Deep Yich Tam suddenly jumped up, hitting her head on a beam, almost fainting. Countless sand particles fell from the beam. Those sitting below were not wearing goggles, and everyone got sand in their eyes. Everyone rubbed their eyes and asked Deep Yich Tam what was wrong, if she was being silly. My eyes also got sand in them, and I couldn't see anything. I only heard Deep Yich Tam's trembling voice say, "There's a corpse in the right corner of the wall." Corpse. Hatcha Kwok, rubbing his eyes, asked, Tam, do you need to be that scared? Are we archaeologists afraid of corpses? Sand also flew into Deep Yich Tam's eyes. She held her head and apologized. Sorry, Teacher Hatch. I didn't expect there to be a dead person in this room. I wasn't mentally prepared. I'm sorry. I heard there was a trick. If you get something in your eye, immediately spit, and it helps. I had tried this trick 100 times before, and it always worked. So I quickly spat, and the gritty feeling in my eyes immediately decreased. A lot of tears flowed, but I could open my eyes. As soon as I opened my eyes, I was startled. It turned out that the spit I just made landed right on Shirley Yang's head. She was a clean person. Even after traveling day and night in the desert, she always maintained good hygiene. Fortunately, she was constantly rubbing her eyes, and in her confusion, didn't notice someone had spit on her head. I pretended nothing happened, quickly took out a flashlight from my bag, and walked to the corner of the wall. Sure enough, there was a human skeleton. The desert climate was unusually hot and dry, so it was impossible to tell how long this person had been dead. Only the white skeleton, half buried in sand and half exposed, was visible. Looking closely, it was indeed very creepy. No wonder Deep Yich Tam jumped up like that. At this time, the rest of the people also opened their eyes one by one, took out water bottles, and dabbed water on the eyes of those who had too much sand. I told everyone not to worry. This was just a human skeleton. Who knows how many years it had been dead. After everyone ate, drank, and rested, we could dig a hole and bury it. Besides old Anlaman, the archaeological team members were all people who regularly dealt with corpses, so no one was scared. There was just a bit of doubt about the skeleton lying there. People who die in the desert rarely decompose, most are naturally mummified by the wind. But this white skeleton had no flesh left, so perhaps it had been picked clean by desert wolves. Old Anlaman thought this was not strange. Hadn't the white camel run in here to avoid the sandstorm? Fortunately, we followed it and escaped disaster. This area was different from the semi-desert, semi-wasteland areas of Yaden and Lulin. People entering this western Black Desert only dared to follow the ancient Kangkyu River, not daring to stray half a step. Relying on their own strength, it was impossible to find this deserted city. But desert animals were different. This deserted city must have been a place Hutai granted to desert animals for shelter. We just didn't see it, but behind the walls of these ruined rooms there might be countless wolves, gazelles, and leopards taking shelter. Now there was a big sandstorm in the sky, and all animals were terrified, so none were preying on each other. When the storm subsides, perhaps wolves and gazelles might find themselves sheltering in the same room, at which point the wolf would bare its teeth and the gazelle would fight back with its horns. Hearing that there were many wild animals taking shelter in these houses, timid people like Deep Yich Tam became a bit nervous. Old Anlaman was also worried about the camels hiding behind the city wall. He had to brave the sandstorm to go out and tie the camels together. It seemed the sandstorm wouldn't end soon, and no one knew how long they would have to hide in this room. So I told Tuyen Bio and Sokin to go out with him, and while they were at it, bring in food, fuel, and sleeping bags. The three of them put on goggles, covered their noses, mouths, and ears with scarves, and climbed out through the hole in the roof. After about 20 minutes, they returned, covered in sand and dust. Tuyanbio took off his scarf and goggles, plopped down on the ground. The wind is really strong. If the three of us hadn't held onto each other, it might have swept us all into the sky. But the old man didn't lie to us. When we passed a collapsed wall behind it, there were 6 or 7 gazelles hiding. Later, when the wind dies down, I'll take my gun and shoot 2 of them. Everyone can have some fresh meat. We've been eating dried meat for days. I'm sick of it. Old Anlaman heard this and firmly objected. No, you can't shoot. The sound of the gun will make all the wild animals hiding in the city run away. If they run, they'll be buried alive in the devil's storm. We and these animals are the same. We are all granted grace by Hutai to shelter here. You must not do that. Tuyanbio replied, All right, just sit still. I was just saying it. Why are you so talkative? I'll just keep eating dried meat, okay? You can't even stop someone from eating dried meat, right? Saying this, he took out dried meat, canned food, and white liquor, and distributed them to everyone. After rushing through the desert for more than half a day, now trapped by a sandstorm in the ruins of this nameless city, besides Tuyanbio and old Anlaman, no one else had the appetite to eat or drink. I was concerned about Professor Tran, the oldest member, and there was a lack of medicine in the desert. It was best if nothing unexpected happened. I held the leather flask of liquor next to the professor, urging him to drink a few sips to ease his fatigue. Shirley Yang and Hatch Ai Kwok helped Professor Tran sit up. Besides So Keen, who was taking his turn guarding the hole in the roof, all the other students gathered around the professor, concerned. Professor Tran seemed to have recovered. He took a gulp of liquor and forced a smile. I remember back in the day when I was doing field work, then I was locked in a cowshed for over 3 years, and then went to a labor reform farm to cut mountains and dig rocks. I endured all sorts of hardships, but I always got back up. Now I'm old and useless, huh? Today, luckily, we had An Nyat. Without him, this old body would probably have been buried alive in the sandstorm. I comforted him, saying I couldn't take Shirley Yang's money for nothing. These were all part of my duties. If he felt unwell, we could turn back early, there was still time. But if we went past the ancient city of Xie, that was the center of the Black Desert, where the environment was much harsher. By then it would be too late to regret. Professor Tran shook his head, firmly indicating he wanted to continue, telling everyone not to worry. Such a sandstorm only happens once every 100 years, not often. Since they had found shelter, they had escaped danger, and great fortune would surely follow. I was about to persuade him further when Shirley Yang pulled me aside and whispered, An Nyat, I previously thought you were a bit young to be the team leader, and I worried you didn't have enough ability and experience. Today, I know better. You definitely must be the leader. I have something I hope you can help with. Today, we experience the power of nature, and everyone's morale has dropped quite a bit. I hope you can encourage everyone and lift the team's spirits. This wasn't easy, but since the boss had spoken, I had no choice but to comply. When everyone gathered to eat and drink, I said, Comrades, our atmosphere right now is a bit gloomy. Singing while on the march is a fine tradition of our army. Shall we sing a song? Everyone looked at each other, finding it hard to understand, thinking, when did we become soldiers? What does our army's fine tradition have to do with us? Sing in this situation. For a moment, no one reacted. I thought, oh no, I messed up, that was stupid. Why did I bring up that company trick here? So I quickly corrected myself. No, it's like this, we can just chat. I'll give everyone a summary report of a battle on the front line. Everyone heard I was going to tell a story and became interested, gathering closer. While eating, they listened to me say, once we received an extremely difficult mission, to capture Hill 306. On this hill, there were several enemy strongholds, and their positions were excellent, forming a dead angle where our artillery could not directly destroy them, so we could only send infantry to attack. My company was Company 6. We attacked 3 times in a row, all unsuccessfully, sacrificing 7 men and wounding more than 10. Our company was a heroic company famous throughout the division. It had never fought a bad battle before. The soldiers were all very disheartened and couldn't rally their spirits. I was getting anxious when the division commander called. On the phone, he cursed me out, asking if the company could fight. If not, we should withdraw from our position and also relinquish the title of heroic company. The division would send another company. I couldn't accept that. I hung up the phone and thought of a solution. I told the soldiers that the Central Military Commission had just called and said that Uncle Deng Xiaoping knew about the miracle of our Company 6 on the front line. He praised Company 6 for fighting valiantly and said we would surely capture the position. As soon as the soldiers heard this, they asked, "What? Uncle Deng Xiaoping knows about our company?" Then we couldn't let Uncle Deng lose face. At that moment, they regained their spirit, charged forward, and immediately captured the position. Everyone in the archaeological team felt excited upon hearing this, eagerly asking about the specific situation on the front line. I told everyone, "Comrades, I am telling this story to say that no difficulty can stop us. Our greatest enemy is ourselves. As long as we overcome our own fear, as long as we overcome our own weaknesses, we will definitely achieve final victory." Under my stirring, the previous gloomy atmosphere finally broke. Although the sandstorm outside was fierce, these people were no longer as tense as before. After eating, it was Tapta Bang's turn to relieve Sokin from guard duty. Tuyen Bio and I went to deal with the skeleton of the victim. Leaving it exposed would make people in the room uncomfortable. It was better to bury it before going to sleep. The weather was too harsh to bury it outside, so we could only dig in the sand to bury it. After only a few digs, the military shovel hit rock. I felt something strange. The foundation of this room was very high, and thousands of years of blown sand had accumulated, making it even higher. Why did we hit rock after only a few digs? We pushed aside the sand and saw only a block of black rock. Digging further to the sides, there was no more rock. Hatch Ai Kwok and the others saw this and came to help. Working together, we dug more than half a meter deep, and in the golden sand, a black stone statue head emerged. This head was twice the size of two normal human heads combined. Its eyes were rhomboid, long and narrow, disproportionately large compared to the other facial features, looking very unbalanced. The top of the head had no cap, only two buns of hair. Its expression was extremely serene, showing no joy, anger, sorrow, or happiness. It looked both like a deity worshipped in a temple and like a stone figure placed along a mountain road leading to a large tomb. But judging by the position of the stone statue in this room, the former seemed more likely. I lit a gas lamp. Professor Tran came to see it and told Hatch Ai Kwok, "Look at this stone statue. Haven't we seen something like this before?" Hatch Ai Kwok put on his prescription glasses and examined it carefully. "Ah yes, Xinjiang once excavated a tomb complex with thousands of coffins, and there were identical stone figures there. The eyes are very unique, completely different from ordinary people. This must be one of those big-eyed stone statues. These big-eyed stone statues have been found in the Tianshan and Altai regions, the Hoden River Basin in Xinjiang, and even the Mongolian steppes. Their origin is no longer verifiable today. Scholars once suggested they might be a deity worshipped by the Mongols. According to historical records, Kublai Khan had a secret traveling palace in the desert called the Incense Palace, and these stone figures were first worshipped there. However, over many years, with the discovery of even earlier ancient sites and tombs, big-eyed stone figures were found in them, refuting the Incense Palace hypothesis. Some say these are relics left by the Turks, but in the end, there is still no satisfactory explanation. This has become one of countless unsolved mysteries in archaeological history. The students in the archaeological team had never seen such big-eyed stone statues. They all took out pens to write and draw in their notebooks, then discussed digging up the rest of the sand below to see the full body of the statue. Hatch Ai Kwok explained some related knowledge to them, saying that everyone was tired today and should rest first. Tomorrow, after the storm subsides, they could clear the sand in the house and see if anything else was discovered. I chose another spot to dig in the sand and bury the skeleton of the victim. This person had nothing on them that could prove their identity or origin. There wasn't even a simple tombstone that could be made for them. Wouldn't it have been better to live a comfortable life at home instead of wandering in this desert to suffer? Well, rest in peace here. I checked my watch. It was late afternoon. The sandstorm outside continued to howl, and it seemed to be getting stronger and stronger. It might even blow all night. Besides Tap-to-Bang standing guard, everyone else rubbed fine sand on their feet and crawled into their sleeping bags to rest. This method was learned from old Anlaman. In the desert, water is gold, so one can only use fine sand to clean their feet. I went to find Tap-to-Bang, who was guarding the hole in the ceiling, and told him to sleep for a while. I would take over. I sat in the corner of the wall, holding the sports rifle, on guard against any wild animals that might suddenly sneak in and attack. While smoking, I listened to the howling wind outside, thinking about Professor Tran and the others who had to continue deeper into the desert, and I felt a headache coming on. Who knew how many dangers and traps were hidden deep within that black desert? That no one was injured or killed in today's sandstorm could truly be considered a miracle. I was lost in thought, smoking one cigarette after another, not knowing how long I sat there. The sky outside had turned pitch black, and the wind was still as loud as ever, like the wailing of countless ghosts. Occasionally, clumps of sand fell into the crevices in the ceiling. If this wind didn't stop, I feared the collapsed wall outside would be swallowed by the sandstorm. At this moment, I noticed Shirley Yang had woken up. She saw me guarding in the corner and walked over, seemingly intending to talk to me. Normally, I rarely talk to her, mainly because she and Tuyen Bio didn't get along. They found each other irritating. So apart from essential times, we rarely spoke to her, fearing she might deduct my pay if I said something wrong, which would be exhausting enough. Out of politeness, I greeted her. Shirley Yang walked over and asked, "Anyat, you should also rest for a while. I'll take over for 2 hours." I said there was no need. I would call Tuyen Bio to relieve me later, and she should continue to rest. However, she sat opposite me and started a conversation. There was one thing I always wanted to ask her: why she insisted on finding that ancient city. Perhaps that city had long disappeared. No one had seen it for years. Her father and other explorers might not have been lost in the city itself. All sorts of dangers could be encountered in the desert. It was truly difficult to find the remains of those who had gone missing. Moreover, there were hundreds of unsolved mysteries in that black desert. I once read some newspapers that said 3 explorers went there and disappeared. Many years later, their bodies were found on the edge of the desert. All 3 died of dehydration, but strangely, their canteens still had more than half a bottle of water. Many similar incidents occurred. Our human understanding of the desert is truly too limited. There are many types of desert animals, many of which have not even been discovered yet. We should just try our best to search. Even if we don't find it, we shouldn't blame ourselves too much. Shirley Yang nodded. You make a lot of sense, but from beginning to end, I firmly believe my father's team found the ancient city of Jingjue. Because after he disappeared in the desert, I dreamed more than once of a pitch black cave with a large coffin hanging at its entrance. The coffin was carved with ghost cave characters and bound with many large iron chains. Something very large covered the coffin. I couldn't clearly see what it was. Every time I tried to strain my eyes to see it clearly, I would wake up. For more than half a year, I've had that dream almost every night. I believe my father sent me a dream. That coffin must belong to the Queen of Jingjue. I thought, why are Americans so superstitious? They even believe in dream messages. But seeing her serious expression, I didn't dare to refute, only comforted her a few words, then changed the subject, asking what the kingdom of Jingjue was really about. Shirley Yang recounted, my father and Professor Tran were close friends for many years. When they were young, they were classmates and shared a passion for the ancient culture of the Western regions. In 1948, my father and his family emigrated to the United States. After the Cultural Revolution, he returned to China for the first time. While in America, my father bought a batch of cultural artifacts, all precious relics excavated by European explorers in the Xinjiang desert around the early 19th century. Those European explorers once discovered an ancient city ruin near the Nia oasis. According to research, the ruins and artifacts there were all from the Han dynasty. Based on some clues, that place was very likely the ruins of the kingdom of Jingjue, the most powerful among the 36 Western region states in ancient times. My father and Professor Tran, through many years of research, speculated that the Nia ruins were merely a city belonging to the kingdom of Jingjue, while the central city of Jingjue must have been located north of Nia, in the lower reaches of the Sidu River. My father hoped to personally find these Jingjue ancient city ruins during his lifetime, so he risked organizing an expedition into the desert. As for this ancient city, once glorious, not many records remain today. The kingdom of Jingjue was the leader of a confederation of small states in the western regions at that time. Those small states, from today's perspective, were merely a few large and small cities naturally formed along trade routes. Each city was considered a state, and the most powerful among all those small states was Jingjue. The Jingjue people were mainly from the Ghost Cave ethnic group, mixed with other minorities. After the last queen of Jingjue died, the city also sank into the Sea of Sand. Whether it was destroyed by natural disaster or war is unknown. It's as if this nation never existed. Until just before World War II broke out, a British explorer led his expedition into the Taklamakan Desert, and only he survived and returned. His mind was completely broken, but through some photos in his camera and diary entries, the existence of the ancient city of Jingjue was confirmed. Some people tried to search based on this clue, but immediately afterward, World War II broke out, and it wasn't until 3 or 4 years ago that expeditions had the opportunity to enter the desert to search for treasures and ruins. Shirley Yang took out a small bundle and showed it to me. I took it and opened it. Inside were several yellowed black and white photos and an old English notebook. The photos were very blurry, but one could faintly make out a city in the desert, with a tower in the middle. The details were almost impossible to discern. I asked Shirley Yang, could this be? ? Shirley Yang nodded and said, that's right, these are the photos and diary of Mr. Walt, the explorer who personally visited the ancient city of Jingjue, which my father bought from England. These things also give us some clues, but this diary only writes about the team reaching the lower reaches of the Sidu River and seeing a large city, preparing to enter and explore it early the next morning. After that, nothing else is written. We don't know what happened to them in the ancient city ruins, and why only one lucky person survived, but returned mentally unstable. Shirley Yang and I were engrossed in conversation when I casually noticed that, in the corner illuminated by the gas lamp, the eyes of the big-eyed stone statue's huge head seemed to move. I hadn't slept for a day and 2 nights. Was I hallucinating?